During a family will reading, my husband's face lit up when the attorney announced, "You've been left $250,000. But then the lawyer turned to me and said, "And here's the letter he asked you to read before accepting it." I opened it slowly, read aloud, and said, "You lied about everything. My name is Marla Wexley, and I'm 51 years old. I live in Eugene, Oregon, in the same craftsman house Paul and I bought 15 years ago after he got his promotion at the bank. It's got a porch that creaks when you step on the third plank, a faded blue swing no one really uses anymore, and a kitchen I once dreamed of remodeling, but never did. Life's had its moments, some loud, some painfully quiet. Most of it, routine. I work as a dental hygienist. Not glamorous, but it's steady, and I like the patients, well, most of them. I've been in the same office for over 2 decades. My boss, Dr. Halbridge, is an old-school guy who still wears his wedding ring, even though his wife passed 4 years ago. He doesn't talk much, but he treats his staff like family. That kind of thing means something these days. My husband, Paul, works in commercial banking. Numbers, suits, and long emails. We met when I was 29 and he was 34. He was charming in a quiet way, confident without being loud, smart without showing off. He wore his shirts tucked in too neatly and had this way of always checking his watch like he was measuring every second he gave you. We have 2 kids. Mason is 22, in his senior year at Oregon State. Wants to be an engineer. Nora, our daughter, is 19 and currently backpacking through Europe with her friend Lila. Said she needed space to breathe before starting college. She's always been the free spirit, the one who asked hard questions and hated small talk. Paul and I weren't perfect, who is? But we were solid. At least, that's what I told myself. Until the day we sat in that lawyer's office in Spokane. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had just finished with a patient, a sweet lady named Judy who always brings lemon scones for the staff when she comes in. As I was cleaning up my tray, my phone buzzed. "Paul, can you leave early? Uncle Raymond passed. There's a will reading today at 3. Spokane. Raymond was Paul's mother's brother. Lived alone in a big house on the outskirts of town. Used to be a history professor before he retired and got weirder with age. He had a parrot named Gus that cussed at people, a garden full of untrimmed lavender, and a thing for Civil War memorabilia. He wasn't the type to keep in touch, but we'd visited him a handful of times over the years, always awkward visits that felt like we were fulfilling an obligation. I replied, "Sorry to hear. I'll ask Halbridge if I can go early." He gave me the nod without question. "Family stuff always comes first," he said, already putting away his tools. Paul picked me up in his dark green Subaru around 12:30. He was dressed nicer than usual, pressed shirt, blazer, even cologne. I thought it was a bit much for a will reading, but I didn't say anything. We drove in near silence, save for some AM radio and a few half-hearted comments about road construction. About an hour outside Spokane, he finally spoke. "You think he left us anything?" Paul asked. I glanced at him. "What?" "Like in the will." He nodded. "I mean, Raymond didn't have kids. No wife. He had to leave it to someone, right?" I shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe. I always thought he'd leave it to some historical society or something." Paul tapped the steering wheel, smirking. "Bet he stashed away a fortune in gold coins or something weird like that." It was supposed to be a joke, but I noticed how his tone didn't quite match his grin. Like he'd thought about it before. Maybe more than once. The office of Wallace and Bryce was one of those old converted Victorian homes downtown. The kind with creaky floors and walls that smell faintly of pipe tobacco and lemon polish. We walked in together, and the receptionist led us to a waiting room where a few others were already seated. There was a woman around our age, Paul's cousin, I think, flipping through a dog-eared magazine. An older man I recognized as Raymond's neighbor, and a tall, lanky man with thinning hair who looked like he didn't belong there at all. At precisely 3 p.m., a man in a gray 3-piece suit entered. He looked like he hadn't smiled since 1998. "Thank you all for coming," he said, motioning us into a room with a large oval table and a thick stack of folders in the center. We took our seats. "My name is Arnold Bryce. I'll be reading the last will and testament of Mr. Raymond Wexley." He started with the formalities. Funeral arrangements. His house, which was to be sold, with the proceeds split between his longtime housekeeper and the local historical museum. Then came the big one. "To my nephew, Paul Wexley," I heard Paul inhale. "I leave a sum of $250,000, conditional upon the reading of a personal letter addressed to his wife, Marla." The air changed. like someone had opened a window on a cold day. To me. I asked, frowning. Mr. Bryce nodded, sliding a cream-colored envelope across the table. It had my name written on the front in careful, shaky script. I hesitated. Paul chuckled awkwardly. Probably some paranoid old man rant. You know how he was. But I could see it, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the table. I opened the envelope. The paper inside was lined, yellowed slightly at the edges. I cleared my throat and began to read. Dear Marla, if you're reading this, then Paul knows his little secret is out. Or rather, it's about to be. I'm sorry to bring it to you like this, but you deserve the truth. And I've never been one to sugarcoat. Paul didn't just visit me. He came to see Marisol, my former housekeeper and later, his mistress. Yes, your husband has been living a lie. For over a decade. He kept a second life in Spokane. With Marisol. He even bought her a small house 3 blocks from mine. I saw him there. Many times. He got her pregnant. Twice. The first child, a boy, is now 10. The second, a girl, is 8. Marisol never asked for anything. She kept it quiet to avoid ruining your life. But I couldn't. I kept records. Letters. Birth certificates. Even photos. They're in the box labeled old tax docs in my study. I did this not to destroy, but to protect the truth. Paul doesn't deserve your trust. But I believe you deserve a choice. That money? It's not his. It never was. If you accept the truth and choose not to share it with him, the inheritance will be yours instead. Do what's right. Raymond, when I finished reading, the room went still. Even the ticking grandfather clock in the corner felt louder than it should have. I looked at Paul. His face had drained of all color. This is insane, he said, voice tight. Raymond was bitter. Delusional. He made things up. You know that. I didn't respond. I just looked at him. Tell me it's not true, I said. My voice cracked on the last word. He looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I didn't cry right away. I didn't yell. I didn't even get up. I just sat there, feeling like the walls had shifted around me. Marla, Paul said, more urgently now. You're seriously not buying this, are you? You know how Raymond was. He was lonely. He hated seeing people happy. This is him lashing out from the grave. I turned to Bryce. Is there a box? The attorney nodded. Yes, it's in our evidence storage. Raymond dropped it off himself 2 months ago, along with the letter. Said it was for you alone. I want to see it, I said. Paul opened his mouth like he was about to say something else, but stopped. His jaw clenched. The mask was cracking. Bryce stood up. Follow me. Downstairs in the back of the house, he unlocked a door that led into a room that felt like a combination of storage closet and war archive. Metal shelving units lined the walls, holding boxes marked with names and dates. He pulled one down and handed it to me. It was heavier than I expected. I carried it back upstairs to the table while Paul just sat there motionless. I opened it. Inside were 3 smaller folders, a bundle of letters tied with twine, and a few manila envelopes. One of the folders had 2 birth certificates, names I didn't recognize at first glance, Mateo Rivera and Clara Rivera. Father listed, Paul Wexley. I felt like I'd been punched. There were photos. A woman with dark hair standing in front of a modest white house. The same woman holding a newborn wrapped in a blue blanket. Paul beside her, his hand on her back. Smiling. I couldn't breathe. I turned to Paul. You have a son? My voice was hoarse. He rubbed his face with both hands, then exhaled long and slow. Marla, listen. It's not what you think. I was going to tell you. I swear. There was never a good time. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because he said that with a straight face. 10 years, Paul, I whispered. 10 years. 2 kids. A house. You were building a life with her. It didn't mean anything, he snapped. It was a mistake that kept going, and I didn't know how to fix it. Did you love her? I asked. He hesitated. And that was it. That pause? That tiny flicker of hesitation? It answered everything. We drove back to Eugene in silence. No radio. No small talk. Just the road and my thoughts, loud in my head. Paul tried once, around Pendleton, to start up a conversation. I know it looks bad, but we can work through this. I don't want to lose what we have. I didn't respond. I stared out the window at a blur of evergreens and billboards, my hands folded tightly in my lap. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I took the guest room and locked the door. Paul didn't knock. Didn't try to explain. Maybe he knew there wasn't a damn thing he could say. The next morning, after he left for work, I went into our home office and pulled out one of the moving boxes we never fully unpacked. I opened a folder and started writing down names, addresses, dates, everything I could piece together from Raymond's documents. Marisol Rivera. For 11, Clayton Street, Spokane. Mateo. Clara. I stared at the children's faces in the photos. Mateo had Paul's eyes. That dark amber color that I'd once thought was beautiful. Clara had my daughter's same dimpled cheeks. I sat there for a long time. Then I called Nora. She answered on the second ring, wind in the background. Hey, Mom. You're not gonna believe the old castle we found outside Bruges. I cut her off. Sweetie, are you sitting down? The kids took it hard. Nora was angry, furious even. Not just at Paul, but at me, for keeping calm. You're not even going to scream at him, she asked during our FaceTime call. He lied to all of us. I'm still figuring out what I feel, I said. And that was the truth. I hadn't processed it all. I was numb. It was like someone had ripped out the foundation of my home and left me standing on sand. Mason, always the quiet one, didn't say much at first. He came home the next weekend and asked if he could go through the box. I let him. He sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours, flipping through the files. After a while, he looked up. So, do we have siblings? Looks like it, I said. He nodded slowly. That's a lot. Yeah, it was. A few days later, I drove to Spokane. I didn't tell Paul. I didn't even pack much. Just my purse, a coat, and the box in the passenger seat. I stayed at a cheap motel near downtown and, the next morning, knocked on the door of 411 Clayton Street. The woman who answered looked exactly like the photo. Her hair was shorter now, but her face was the same. Strong jawline, tired eyes, the look of someone who'd carried too much for too long. She looked at me and froze. Are you Marla? She asked, quietly. I nodded. I figured you might come one day. She opened the door and stepped aside. Inside, it was small but tidy. Lived in. There were toys on the carpet, a stack of school books on the table, and 2 kids in the next room, watching cartoons. I'm not here to yell, I said, sitting down on her worn couch. I just need to understand. Marisol sighed. I never meant to hurt you. I swear. How long? I asked. Since 2012. I closed my eyes. He said it didn't mean anything. She smiled, but it was sad. It meant enough for him to buy us this house. Enough to come back every few months. I didn't want to know the details, but I asked anyway. Did you love him? She hesitated, then nodded. I did. At first. But then I realized. I was just part of a lie he was building. I pointed to the kids' drawings pinned on the wall. Do they know? Only that he's their special visitor. I told them he travels for work. I didn't want them to grow up confused. I nodded. My throat burned. She poured us tea. We talked for nearly 2 hours. I learned more about my husband in that time than I had in 19 years of marriage. Before I left, I asked her, why didn't you ever reach out? I almost did, she said. But Raymond convinced me not to. Said you deserved better than to find out like that. She looked down. He was right. I drove home with the windows down. Let the cold air sting my cheeks. My phone buzzed 5 times. Paul. I ignored each one. When I got home, he was in the kitchen, pacing. Where the hell were you? He asked. Spokane. His eyes widened. You went. I met her, I said. I met your kids. He looked like he might throw up. Marla, I snapped. Don't give me the same recycled garbage. I've heard it. I've lived it. This is bigger than you lying to me. You lied to them. To Mason. To Nora. His voice cracked. I made a mistake, no, I said. You built a second life. That's not a mistake. That's a decision you made over and over again. He sat down heavily in the chair. So what happens now? I stared at him. And for the first time in years, I felt something new, clarity. The next few days passed like a dream I couldn't wake up from. Not a nightmare, exactly. Those are loud, filled with screaming and chaos. This was worse, quiet. Like the moments after a bomb goes off and all you can hear is a high-pitched ring and your own heartbeat. Paul tried to return to normal. He made coffee like he always did, read the paper like he cared about the headlines, asked if I needed anything from the store. Like I didn't know he had an entire family tucked away, just one stayed over. Like the betrayal wasn't sitting between us at the dinner table like a ghost we weren't allowed to acknowledge. I didn't play along. On the third day after Spokane, I took down the wedding photo from the hallway wall and put it face down in a drawer. I didn't announce it. I didn't need to. That night, Paul asked, "So, is this what we're doing now?" "You pretend I don't exist." I looked at him, still holding a dish towel. "No, I'm pretending you're someone you're not. Because that's what I did for the last 10 years. He flinched. "I made mistakes, Marla," he said, voice cracking. "But I love you. I never stopped loving you." "You love me while building a life with someone else? That's not love, Paul. That's cowardice." He stood there for a moment, hands in fists at his sides, then walked out of the kitchen without another word. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Carlene Ridgway, a friend of my coworker's sister. She had the kind of voice that made you feel like she'd already won 3 arguments that day and hadn't broken a sweat. I laid everything out. Not just about the will, but the whole thing, Raymond's letter, the documents, the kids in Spokane. Carlene didn't flinch. "Do you want a divorce?" she asked. I hesitated. That word felt final. And I wasn't ready to be final. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I want options." "Then you came to the right person," she said. She asked for copies of the documents and said she'd look into how the inheritance was legally structured, since Raymond had made it conditional. We scheduled a follow-up for the next week. I spent the weekend at Nora's apartment in Portland. She flew back from Europe early, said she couldn't be gone knowing everything had changed. When I walked in, she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. We sat on her couch, drinking Bad Rose and eating popcorn from the bag. "He's a bastard," she said, biting a kernel. I always thought there was something weird about how much he traveled. "Remember that time he missed my high school play? He said his boss needed him in Boise." She snorted. "He was probably in Spokane." We fell quiet for a moment. "Do you want to meet them?" I asked. "Your half-siblings?" She blinked. I don't know. I didn't either," I admitted. "Are they okay kids?" "They're sweet," I said. "Normal. Mateo loves dinosaurs. Clara's obsessed with drawing animals. They didn't do anything wrong." "No," she said, soft now. "They didn't." She poured another glass. "It's just hard. Knowing Dad was out there playing house with some woman like he didn't already have one." I nodded. "I know." She looked at me. "What are you going to do?" I stared into the wine. "I'm still figuring that out." Back in Eugene, Mason had become a quiet fixture in the house. He stayed longer than planned, cooking dinner for us, mowing the lawn without being asked, leaving little sticky notes on the fridge, "Need more milk." Fed the cat. "Love you." He didn't say much about Paul. But when Paul tried to pull him aside one evening to talk, Mason shut it down quick. "I'm not interested in explanations, Dad. You lied. Just sit with that." Paul didn't try again. By midweek, Carlene called. I went through the documents. "Here's the deal." Raymond set up a conditional disbursement. "The funds go into a trust, controlled by a trustee, me in this case. You can accept the money in your name alone, but only if Paul does not. Once you accept, he's automatically disqualified." I leaned against the wall, heart thumping. "So he gets nothing?" "Not if you claim it. It becomes yours entirely." "What if I don't?" "Then it reverts to a third beneficiary. A nonprofit Raymond supported." I laughed dryly. He really thought this through. Carlene's voice softened. "You're not obligated to take it, Marla. But I think Raymond wanted you to have a choice. And frankly, after what your husband did, I wouldn't feel guilty one bit." I didn't respond right away. Then I asked, "What happens if I take it? Legally, I mean." "You can do whatever you want with it," she said. "Invest it, save it, give it away. Or use it to start over." Start over. That phrase stuck with me. That night, I told Paul about the call. We were in the living room. He was on the couch. I stayed standing. "I met with a lawyer," I said. "The money is mine, if I want it." He looked up. "And?" "I'm thinking about taking it." His face changed, something between panic and rage. "So that's it? You're cutting me out? After everything we've built?" I stepped closer. "You already cut me out, Paul. You built something behind my back. You made your choices." He stood now, angry. "Raymond manipulated you. He wanted this. He hated me for years. He never liked that I got the family name, the house, the respect. This is his final screw you." I raised my voice for the first time in days. "This isn't about him. This is about you. You cheated. You lied. You made children with another woman. You made me a fool." His voice broke. "I was scared, okay? You and I, we drifted. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. I didn't plan it. It just don't, I said. Stop trying to turn this into a both of us problem. I was here. I was faithful. I was present. You were off living a double life. He sat down again, putting his head in his hands. I left the room. Later that night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table flipping through the photos again. Not the ones of Paul and Marisol, but of the kids. I stared at Mateo's birthday picture. He was wearing a little paper crown and holding a Lego box. And then Clara, drawing something with a crayon on the floor. They looked happy, like Paul had actually been there, a part of their world in a way he never really was for Mason and Nora. That hurt, more than I expected. It wasn't just the affair. It was realizing he chose to give the best of himself to another family, while I was left with whatever crumbs were left. I didn't want to cry, but I did anyway, silently, at the table, surrounded by evidence of a life I was never part of. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I sat on the porch swing barefoot, hair a mess, coffee cooling in my hands, and listened to the silence. Real silence. Not the awkward, post-fight quiet. This was different. This was the kind of silence that settles in when you've finally made peace with your decision. I went back inside, pulled out Raymond's letter again, and reread the last few lines. You have the power now. Do what you will. I was ready. I made 3 phone calls that day. First, to Carlene. I'm claiming the inheritance, I told her. Under my name only. She didn't hesitate. I'll file the paperwork today. Second, to Marisol. She answered after 2 rings. Hello. It's Marla. There was a pause. Hi. I want to talk. Again. But this time with the kids. She hesitated. I'm not sure that's a good idea. It is, I said. Trust me. I'm not here to hurt them. After a long pause, she agreed. Okay. Saturday? Saturday. Third, I called a realtor. Hi, this is Marla Wexley. I'm looking to get my house appraised. I'd like to list it. That Saturday, I drove back to Spokane, a thick envelope on the passenger seat. Inside it was a cashier's check, documents from my lawyer, and something I never thought I'd willingly give, forgiveness. Not for Paul. He hadn't earned it. But for the kids. For myself. When I got to Marisol's house, the kids were in the backyard. Mateo was kicking a soccer ball. Clara was drawing on the concrete with pink chalk. She'd drawn a big heart. I stared at it longer than I meant to. Hi, I said, stepping onto the grass. Mateo looked at me curiously. Are you the lady from the picture? What picture? He ran inside and came back holding a small photo frame. It was me and Paul on our wedding day. I found this in the closet once, he said. Mom said you were someone important. I knelt down beside him. I said gently. I'm your father's wife. Clara came up beside me, holding out a crayon. You want to draw with me? I took it, heart aching and full all at once. I'd love to. We spent the afternoon together. I didn't mention the affair. I didn't talk about betrayal or mistakes. I talked to them like any adult talks to children who deserve honesty, without lies, but also without burdening them with weight that isn't theirs to carry. When it was time to leave, I handed Marisol the envelope. She opened it slowly. Her eyes went wide. This is too much. No, I said. It's not. It's for them. For their future. But it's your money, she said. I'm using part of it, I said. But this is the rest. You've been raising them without help. That ends now. I don't want anything from Paul, and he sure as hell isn't getting a dime. But the kids, they didn't ask for any of this. And they deserve better. She was crying by the time I finished. Quiet, shaking tears. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for them. And for me. The final step came 3 weeks later. I filed for divorce. I waited until all the financials were secured, trusts set up for Mason and Nora, money moved to private accounts, the house listed and sold. I used some of the inheritance to buy a small, sun-filled bungalow in Ashland, Oregon, a quiet town with bookstores, wine bars, and theater festivals. A place that felt like it could be mine. Paul didn't take it well. What the hell is this? He snapped when he saw the papers. You're leaving? Like it's that easy. No, I said. It's not easy, but it's necessary. You're punishing me. I stared him down. Calm. Measured. No, Paul. I'm freeing myself. Punishment would be staying. He tried begging. He tried guilt. He even threatened to go public with the story, to make me look like the villain for stealing his inheritance. So I handed him a single sheet of paper. It had pictures of him with Marisol. With the kids. Handwritten letters Raymond had kept. Copies of the birth certificates with his name on them. You really want to go to court? I asked. He didn't. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I threw a dinner party in my new home. Just a handful of close friends. Mason came. Nora brought her new boyfriend. We grilled salmon on cedar planks, poured Pinot Noir, and laughed about old memories. After dessert, I stepped out onto the back porch and looked at the stars. The weight was gone. Not because I'd erased the pain, but because I'd survived it. Because I'd faced it head-on, didn't let it twist me into something bitter. I didn't want to hurt Paul. I wanted him to live with what he did, with everything he lost. That was the best revenge I could imagine. Because in the end, I didn't just take the money. I took my life back. And that was worth more than any inheritance.